One cultural event after another, including this latest episode with Jason Collins' announcement as an active now NBA player that he's gay, and Chris Broussard's response to that announcement on ESPN's Outside the Lines. We should be clear about one thing, and that is that we fundamentally exchanged one definition of what it means to be human for another. Now, some will say all of this is about tolerance and it's about acceptance, that as a society we're now more inclusive than ever, and we should be, of all lifestyle choices and sexual orientations and even sexual behaviors. It's a sign of cultural evolution, some will say, that we're now a more just people than we've ever been. On the other hand, some will say, no, this is another indication of the moral slip. We've abandoned God, and therefore we have no more room for God's will and God's moral purposes for our lives. We've abandoned moral absolutes, and therefore we justify what just ought not be when it comes to sexual behavior, including homosexual behavior. It's not a sign of cultural evolution, it's a sign of cultural devolution, that we are on a just unsustainable path as a society morally, and that we're headed to collapse. Now, I would tend, of course, to be among the second group. It clearly is indication of a moral slip, and not just, and certainly not even specifically a homosexual one, but sexuality in general now has become a sexual free-for-all. But I also think it's more than a slip. I think what we have going on here is an exchange of definitions that began a long time ago. You see, it was once understood that humans were fundamentally religious creatures who were engaged in sexual choices. At our essential core, what defined people as they were that we were religiously responsible and religiously responsive to God and to reality itself. Either we did or we didn't respond well. Either we chose to acknowledge Him or not acknowledge Him, but it wasn't an option just to cop out of the conversation altogether. We had to wrestle with the existence of God in the world. We had to wrestle with the way the world actually was and how the world was created and shaped and how we should best respond to it and be human in it. We are all, as Calvin once said, incurably religious people. This is what was thought. It wasn't an incidental part of our lives that we were religious. It was a fundamental part of our lives, that there was something more than just our physical natures. There was something essentially human about us in a metaphysical or supernatural sense. Sexual behavior, on the other hand, was incidental. Wherever our sexual inclinations came from, our behavior, at least, needed to be curbed and contextualized by this larger understanding of who we were. It needed to be placed within a larger framework of our identity as human beings, into relationships that we have with others, and of course in our larger society. But all of that has reversed. Now, there's a pedigree to this whole shift in ideas that's worth studying, but suffice it to say that we've exchanged these two things about our humanness, about our understanding of our identity. The religious impulse and the religious response to the way things were and to who we were actually made to be, all of that now is considered to be purely incidental. To be religious is nothing more than a purely private choice that we make. To be sexual, however, is now considered to be essential, to be the fundamental thing about us. It's so fundamental to our identities that to have inclinations is all it actually takes to justify acting on those inclinations. After all, it's who we are. It's the most defining thing about us. And to deny behavior to these inclinations would be to deny ourselves, we're told. And it's so important that we understand this, because what we have here is a disagreement of the most fundamental kind, a disagreement that is so utterly important. It's not a disagreement about this behavior or that behavior, about whether this is moral or whether that is moral. It's a disagreement about the way the world actually is as such. It's a disagreement about what it means to actually be human in reality. It's a disagreement about who we are. That, in and of itself, is the ground that has been lost. That is the ground that we need to work to reclaim.